I thought I'd seen cruelty in my years as a firefighter, until the day my HOA president told me my son's burn scars were a visual disturbance. What followed was a war of silence, cameras, and legal consequences, and in the end, justice that no one expected. If this story made your blood boil like mine, hit like, subscribe, and stick around till the end, because the justice is worth every second. The moment Judith Perkins stepped onto James Matthews' lawn in her pristine beige pantsuit, clipboard in hand, he knew his quiet Saturday was over. For 8 years, she'd ruled as president of the Oakage Estates Homeowners Association, and in that time, she'd built a name for herself, mostly whispered behind closed doors, as the kind of woman who found violations where none existed. Most residents called her Karen, when she wasn't within earshot. James set his coffee mug on the porch railing and exhaled. "Mr. Matthews," Judith called out, her voice laced with saccharine sweetness that never quite reached her eyes. "We need to discuss your continued non-compliance with community standards." 15 years as a firefighter had taught James patience, but something about this woman never failed to test it.
Good morning to you too, Judith.
"What seems to be the issue today?" "My grass is cut to exactly 3.5 inches, per Section 7 of the bylaws." He didn't bother hiding the sarcasm in his voice. Judith's lips tightened. Clearly, she hated when someone else knew the rules as well as she did. "It's not about your lawn. Though I will be measuring before I leave," she replied crisply. "It's about the visual disturbance your son is causing in the neighborhood." James froze. "I'm sorry, what did you just say about my son?" Judith straightened, sensing she'd struck a nerve. Section 12, Paragraph 4 clearly states all residents must maintain appearances that do not detract from neighborhood aesthetics or property values. Your son's condition is making several neighbors uncomfortable when he plays outside. James felt blood rush to his face. Tyler was 10. 3 years ago, he'd survived the fire that took his mother's life. The scars on the left side of his face and arm were still healing, physically and emotionally. Playing outside had been a recent victory. "You're standing on my porch telling me my child's burn scars are violating your aesthetic standards?" She glanced down at her clipboard. "I'm simply enforcing the rules." Perhaps he could wear long sleeves and some kind of face covering. Or play in the backyard where he's less visible.
James inhaled slowly, counting to 10.
"My son is not a disturbance. He is a survivor. If you ever approach us about this again, I will file a formal complaint for harassment and discrimination." Her cheeks flushed. "Are you threatening me, Mr. Matthews? As president of the HOA, I'm authorized to issue fines and place liens on non-compliant homes. You have 48 hours to address the situation before I convene an emergency board meeting," she snapped, turning on her heel. James didn't reply. He couldn't. Because standing at the window was Tyler, watching, having heard every word. His face was blank, but the hurt in his eyes was unmistakable. Over the next few days, Judith escalated. Notices on the door. Photos of Tyler playing. Whispered comments to neighbors. But she didn't know James had installed a dashcam with a wide-angle lens and audio. It had recorded everything, from her first visual disturbance remark to every petty attempt at intimidation. And James? He was keeping records. Dates. Times. Witnesses. He wasn't just going to endure this. He was preparing. For the next 6 days, Judith Perkins turned petty cruelty into performance art. First came a printed notice taped to the Matthews front door, citing vague bylaw breaches, unapproved exterior objects, as if Tyler's basketball counted. Then James caught her snapping photos from across the street every time his son so much as stepped onto the lawn. She never spoke to Tyler directly, but her silence screamed. Pointing.
Whispering to neighbor.
Pretending to text while her phone camera lingered far too long. James had seen plenty of darkness as a firefighter, burned homes, broken families, unimaginable loss, but something about this woman made his blood boil. And yet, he didn't retaliate. Not yet. Instead, he watched, recorded, documented. His dashcam, a leftover from an insurance dispute the previous year, captured more than just license plates now.
It captured malice.
Every evening, he sat with Tyler, helping with homework or watching cartoons, pretending nothing had changed. But he could see it, his son growing more hesitant, glancing toward the blinds, asking if it was okay to play outside. The confidence Tyler had fought so hard to rebuild was cracking. Then came Sunday. It was one of those golden afternoons that felt like summer had snuck back for a visit. James and Tyler decided to wash the truck. Soap suds, music from the garage speaker, and the kind of laughter that only comes from forgetting, just for a moment, that the world can be cruel.
Tyler loved these moments.
The water fight was inevitable. When James sprayed him with the hose, the boy squealed and ducked behind the fender, giggling.
That is when the voice came.
This is exactly what I'm talking about. Judith stormed up the driveway, flanked by two HOA board members James didn't recognize. Her expression was a cocktail of disgust and triumph. Not only is he fully visible, she snapped, but now you're drawing attention to him with this spectacle. Tyler's laughter died instantly. He stepped behind his father, his wet shirt clinging to scarred skin, joy replaced with shame. James turned slowly. Something inside him had shifted. Enough. Tyler, go inside and dry off, buddy, he said softly, handing the boy a towel. Only once the door shut did he face Judith. You've crossed every line.
Judith scoffed.
We're enforcing standards. If your family can't maintain the aesthetic expectations, you're harassing a child because of how he looks. That's not enforcement.
That is cruelty.
And it's illegal. One of the board members shifted uncomfortably. Judith ignored him. It's not illegal to ask for decency. His face is unsightly, and the bylaws are clear. James stared at her. Did you just say unsightly?
About a child?
On my property. Even the other board member winced. Judith didn't back down. As of today, you're being fined $500. And until the issue is resolved, your son is banned from the community pool, park, and any shared spaces. James smiled.
A calm, deliberate smile.
I'm glad you're here, with witnesses. He reached into his pocket and handed her an envelope. Judith snatched the envelope as if it might bite her. Her confident smirk faltered as she read the bold title, Cease and Desist. Her eyes darted to the signature at the bottom, James's attorney. You're bluffing, she hissed. Not even a little, James replied, voice steady. That letter outlines every documented instance of harassment, discrimination, and public defamation, including today. Judith's gaze flicked toward his truck.
There, juste beneath the rearview mirror, the dashcam's red light blinked calmly, recording every word.
Her jaw tightened.
You can't record me without my consent.
In this state, I only need one party's permission, James said. And I give it. He pointed to the camera.
It's all there, Judith.
From the day you called my son a visual disturbance to today's display. The second board member, a man named David, stepped back. He'd been silent until now, but the color had drained from his face. I think I've heard enough, he said quietly. Judith, this isn't what we signed up for.
Stay out of this.
Judith snapped. We're protecting the integrity of the neighborhood. No, James said firmly. You're abusing your position to bully a child. Judith turned back to him, face flushed. The HOA has rights. You signed the agreement when you bought here. And nothing in that agreement gives you the right to discriminate, James said calmly. Scars from a burn injury qualify as a disability under the Americans with Disabilities Act and the Fair Housing Act. You're violating federal law. For the first time, real fear flickered in her eyes. But she masked it with rage. He's not disabled, he's just unsightly. That's covered under aesthetic rules. There was a stunned silence. Even Judith seemed surprised she'd said it aloud. David took another step back. That's enough, he muttered.
Judith ralliait.
I'm enforcing the rules. You don't like them?
Maybe gestat isn't for you.
James didn't blink. Then I'll see you in court. But Judith wasn't done. She pushed past David and marched toward James's front door. I'll inspect the rest of your property now. If you're already in violation. James stepped in her path. You're not going anywhere near my home. I have authority, she shouted. I can inspect for violations at any time. This is private property, he said, his voice turning cold. And you are now trespassing. Call the police then, she dared, eyes blazing. They'll back me up. James pulled out his phone without hesitation and dialed. Judith's expression shifted from fury to disbelief as he calmly explained the situation to the 911 dispatcher, an HOA president refusing to leave his property, harassing his child, and attempting unlawful entry. The sirens came faster than expected. When the patrol car pulled up, Judith looked ready to spin a story. But her face froze when she saw who stepped out: Officer Jake Reynolds, a man James had once pulled from a flaming wreck years ago. "James," the officer nodded.
What is going on?
Judith launched into a tirade about rules, community standards, and enforcement. Officer Reynolds held up a hand. "Ma'am, regardless of HOA policies, you can't enter someone's home without permission. Now, is there more I need to know?" James told him everything.
Tyler.
The harassment. The video.
The season desist.
Reynolds's jaw clenched as he listened. "Mr. Matthews," he said, "would you like to press charges?" Judith's jaw dropped. "Charges?
Are you serious?
I'm enforcing HOA rules. This is ridiculous." Officer Reynolds didn't flinch. Discriminating against a minor based on his appearance is not a rule, it's harassment. And attempting to enter someone's home without permission?
Déteste trespassing.
Still clinging to her delusion of authority, Judith tried to regain control. "You don't understand. He's violating our legally binding aesthetic agreement. I was just doing my job." She moved toward the porch again, attempting to push past the officer. That was the final mistake. Without raising his voice, Officer Reynolds reached for his cuffs. "Ma'am, you are under arrest for attempted trespassing, harassment of a minor, and disorderly conduct."
Turn around. No. You can't do this to me.
"Do you know who I am?" she shrieked, her voice rising as panic took over. "Yes," he said. "You're someone who just crossed the line." The two HOA board members stood frozen. David looked like he wanted to disappear. Judith was handcuffed on James Matthews' front lawn, still protesting, her clipboard dangling uselessly from one hand. As the patrol car pulled away, her face pressed against the window in disbelief, neighbors peeked from blinds and porches. 4 months, they tolerated Judith's reign, too afraid or too tired to fight back. But now, they saw her fall. And it was spectacular. That evening, James sat with Tyler on the couch.
The boy was quiet, still shaken.
James placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder.
She's gone, buddy. She won't bother us again.
Tyler looked up. Because of the camera? James nodded. And because we stood up for what's right. The next morning brought more fallout. News of the arrest had already made it onto the neighborhood message boards. Some comments defended Judith, others celebrated. But one thing was clear, the tide had turned. 3 days later, the Oakage Estates HOA board held an emergency meeting. James didn't attend, but he didn't have to. Word spread quickly. After reviewing the video evidence and James's documentation, the board had voted unanimously to remove Judith Perkins from her position as president. She was banned from attending further HOA meetings and prohibited from approaching within 100 feet of the Matthews residence. To top it off, the district attorney announced formal charges: harassment, attempted coercion, and violation of civil rights. At her arraignment, Judith was fined $5,000, sentenced to 200 hours of community service, and placed on probation for a full year. The judge issued a protective order forbidding any contact with Tyler. James read the announcement in silence. Not with satisfaction, but with a calm sense of justice. Later that evening, as the sun dipped below the trees and the neighborhood returned to its usual quiet, James and Tyler stepped outside. Tyler dribbled his basketball on the driveway again, nervous at first, then freer. Across the street, a new neighbor waved from their porch.
James waved back.
It wasn't over. But it was a new beginning. Weeks passed. Autumn crept in slowly, painting Oakage Estates in gold and rust. Life settled into a quieter rhythm. Judith Perkins was no longer the shadow hovering over their street. The HOA board remained, of course, but under new leadership, and with a very different tone. More neighborly.
Less militant.
But the scars lingered. James noticed the way Tyler still glanced over his shoulder when stepping outside. The way he hesitated before speaking to strangers. It would take time. Healing always did. One afternoon, James received a letter. Not from the HOA, but from David, the board member who had spoken up. He apologized. Not just for what Judith had done, but for not speaking sooner. I didn't understand how far she'd gone until I saw it myself, the letter read. I should have said something earlier. Thank you for protecting your son, and for reminding the rest of us what real strength looks like. James folded the letter slowly, feeling something release in his chest. Strength wasn't always loud. Sometimes it was quiet. It showed up in court filings and silent cameras. In patience when fury begged to speak. In standing firm when every instinct said to lash out. One Saturday, James took Tyler to the community pool. At first, the boy stood at the edge, arms crossed, towel wrapped tight around him. A few families were already there, people who'd seen the headlines. Whispers traveled faster than sound in places like this. But no one said anything. A girl from Tyler's class waved to him. Another boy tossed him a foam ball. Hesitantly, Tyler dropped his towel. The moment his feet hit the water, James felt a lump rise in his throat. Not from pride, exactly, but something older, deeper. The feeling of seeing hope return to someone who nearly lost it.
Tyler Loged, splashing. Just a boy again.
No labels.
No whisper.
Just joy. Judith's arrest had shocked the community, but it had done more than expose one woman's abuse of power. It forced neighbors to confront their silence. To choose between comfort and conscience. Some moved away quietly. Others changed. And a few, like David, made sure the new HOA president implemented policies that included anti-discrimination clauses. Nothing dramatic, but meaningful. Later that month, James stood before a local town council. He wasn't there as a firefighter, but as a father. He shared what had happened, not to seek vengeance, but to advocate for new protections in HOA governance. His story was added to the state proposal for HOA reform. When the meeting ended, a young couple approached him. They had a child with a cleft lip. They'd read about Tyler. They said thank you. It wasn't a victory parade, but it was real. At home, James tucked Tyler into bed. Dad.
Yeah, buddy.
Do you think people will always stare at me? James paused. Maybe. Some people stare at what they don't understand. But one day, they'll see past all that. They'll see who you are. And who am I?
Tyler whispered.
James smiled.
You're the bravest kid I know.
Outside, the porch light flickered on. Quiet. Warm. Safe. Finally. What would you do if your child was harassed for how they look? Share in the comments below. And don't miss our next episode, more real stories where the underdog fights back and wins.